You guys ready to begin? All right. Welcome. My name is Doug Newman, and I am a program manager on the Team Foundation Server team, and I will be your host today for this talk on taking your application lifecycle management to the cloud with the Team Foundation service. So if you were at the PDC a year ago, you probably saw a demo that we did of the effort we had underway to port Team Foundation Server onto the Azure platform. It's really a proof point of what Azure could do. That effort came to fruition last spring in April when we stood up our first Team Foundation server in the Azure cloud with the intention of having real users use it. We adopted about 16 early adoption customers and a myriad of internal Microsoft employees, and we've been running it continuously since then. Today's a big day for us because, as you hopefully heard at the keynote this morning, we are opening this service up much more broadly than it has been. Everybody at the Build conference is invited to come and sign up to use Team Foundation Server in the cloud. And this session is really intended to jumpstart that for you guys so that you understand what the service is, what it looks like, you know how to go in and sign up yourself, how to use it, how to get productive and whatnot. So we're going to spend the next 45, 50 minutes or so talking about the service preview, what's in there, and walking through the product so that you have a chance to witness it firsthand, with the goal being that you'll leave this session and you'll sit down with that slate that you've got and you'll actually go ahead and sign up and start using it. And when you start to build these new apps and whatnot, you'll use the hosted service for that, or building any apps. But anyways, we'll defer questions to the end because we got actually a lot of people here, so thanks for showing up. And we've got microphones if you want to ask questions at the mics. Otherwise, I'll do my best to remember to repeat the questions so that I don't get in trouble with the AV folks in the back. So without further ado, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Team Foundation Server versus Team Foundation Service and let you understand what's the same and what's different between them. We're going to spend most of the time actually using the product so that you can see what it's like to use Team Foundation Service, and you can yourself go leave the session and go and use it. And then we'll spend some time at the end talking about just the details of the TFS service and what it, what the preview offers and that kind of stuff. So, all that said, it wouldn't be a talk on Visual Studio ALM tools if I didn't include this slide. This is a picture of what Visual Studio's ALM tools look like. You've probably seen it before. I'm not going to dwell on it. Visual Studio has a bunch of tools for all the people involved in the software development process, and Team Foundation Server is the centerpiece, the hub of that, which manages all the collaboration of the software development team. So Team Foundation Service fits right where Team Foundation Server is in this particular one. Effectively the same role. Now, before I dive into Team Foundation Service, though, I want to make sure you understand that we're not the only way to get TFS as a service. In fact, we've got these partners who have been doing this for years now. They offer a great service. If you're looking to have TFS hosted by somebody else so you don't have to administer it, you don't have to manage it, you should really consider these guys. They offer frequently a different kind of product than what we're offering with our service preview. A lot of times they're offering a broader swath of TFS than we offer personally. They're also frequently bundling different consulting and implementation services with that so that they can help you to be most effective with Team Foundation Server. There's a link in the slide which actually was updated in a newer version of the deck. And I'm sorry that it's there, but if you go to Microsoft.com, we've got a page that has these guys on it. Otherwise, if you go to aka.ms/TFS hosting, then that'll take you to the page that actually gives you all the information about these guys. So what is the Team Foundation Service? Well, it's pretty simple. Team Foundation Service is just another way to get Team Foundation Server. As we talked at the PDC last year, we've got one product that runs both on-premises and it runs in the Azure cloud. With the service, we are running it ourselves in the Azure cloud for you. So it means that it's easier for you to get started with it. It means that there's lower overall administration for you. But it also means that we're managing the hardware. And for some people, that's not exactly how they want to run Team Foundation Server. But effectively, you can think of it as being the same product as what we've got running on premises for you. Now, there are some subtle differences, though. So pretty much the fundamentals are all the same. Work item tracking, source control, and build, all that stuff is common across the two products. The new Agile project and product management stuff that was demoed this morning in the keynote, and then I think demoed in a couple sessions since, if you've gone to any of the other Visual Studio sessions, you've probably seen those web-based experiences for managing your backlog and managing your sprints and that kind of stuff. All that stuff is the same both on-premises and in the cloud. The test case management stuff that we did in the Visual Studio 2010 release, which is a great set of features for managing quality efforts, those things work both on-premises and in the cloud. And we have a great heterogeneous development story with TFS these days with our Team Explore Everywhere product. You can do development from Eclipse, from the Mac, from Unix, all these different environments that aren't Visual Studio. And that product works just as well with the hosted service as it does with the on-premises. The advantage of the hosted service is really in the getting started experience because it's just extremely quick for you to go ahead and get it started. Most of our customers, after the TFS 2010 release, most of our customers actually install TFS in about 20 minutes, which is a huge advancement over what it's been previously, and it's one of the best stories in the ALM business for getting an ALM system installed. In the cloud, as you'll see, you get the equivalent kind of thing in about 20 seconds. So it's super fast to get started. And also, we're managing it for you, so you don't have to deal with backups and that kind of stuff. The availability is taken care of by us. The other thing, collaboration with anyone, anywhere. The on-premises product can do this very well as well. You can take TFS on-premises and you can install it internet-facing. You can open up a port in your firewall and let people externally access it. Those people have to have Windows accounts that are known to the Team Foundation server. So you'll still, if you're collaborating with somebody outside of your company, you have to have some identity established for them inside of your corporate firewall. The advantage with the service is that we use, obviously, it's in the cloud, so it's accessible from anywhere that you have an internet connection. And then we use internet identities for the service, starting with Windows Live ID, so that you don't actually have to create new administrative identities for people who might not already have one and you just want to collaborate in TFS with. So we'll go through that whole process of what that looks like. Now that said, the Team Foundation service does not have everything that's in Team Foundation Server. In the TFS 2010 release, we added a great new capability around managing test labs and spinning up these virtual test labs using Hyper-V and System Center VMM, SCVMM, Virtual Machine Manager, which I think may have been renamed since then. But that stuff is not in the cloud yet. The SharePoint integration that we have with the on-premises story is not in the cloud yet. And the data warehouse reporting story that we have with TFS is not in the cloud yet. All of those things will come eventually with time. We're going to have a lot of releases of this product, and we hope to innovate very quickly on it. So you should see these things showing up as you're using the service as we move forward. So all that said, I think the best way for us to dig in is just to actually go and sign up for it. So let me see if I can figure out how to switch over to my laptop demo machine here. Who's already signed up for the service? Anyone? Hey, all right, a few people. And it's worked? Yeah, okay. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and do that. When you guys picked up your slates yesterday, tablets, you got one of these things, right? Does it look familiar? And inside this is a little card. It's like a really fancy fold-out thing. But there's a card with this URL that says mystery on it. Ooh, right? On the back of it is a GUID. That GUID is your invitation code. That's what's going to get you access to the hosted Team Foundation service. So, it's only good for one account, so don't give it away unless you don't want it. We'll talk a little bit about how if you do want to give away access, you can do that. I'll show you that in a second. But this is what our starting point is. So we're going to come down here and bring up Internet Explorer and browse to the URL that's on there, which is this mystery URL, which had you gone there yesterday would have said, come back after the keynote. And today it says, hey, this is what it's all about. So on that page is a little bit of text, but a link through to the account sign-up experience. And we're going to go ahead and sign up here for an account. And you'll see just how easy and quick this really is. So we're starting off, Windows Live ID is the only identity provider that is available in the service today. The service is built on the Azure Access Control services, so we have the ability to broaden that, and we hope to do that at some point in the future. We just haven't done the work to go ahead and turn that on. But so I'm going to use my Windows Live ID to authenticate with the server. I need to provide a URL. This is the unique ID for my account. And for the purposes of the demo, I don't actually want to take a URL that somebody else might want to use. So I'm going to just use build 818, which happens to be my session code today. So you get to pick whatever you want. You can pick your corporate name. You can pick your own little email tag or whatever. It has to be a valid URL. And then an invitation code. This is where you'll type in your GUID. I actually, rather than having to type a GUID, I have one pre-created or pre-stored here that I'll just paste in. And then if I scroll down, accept the terms of service because I've read them comprehensively, and click sign up. It's going to ask me for my Live ID. So you'll provide yours here. And then who's timing it? 30 seconds. We're going to see how long it takes. The server's under a little load today, so it might take a little bit longer. I told you 20 seconds, right? What this is doing right now is it's setting up the equivalent of an on-premises Team Foundation server for you. So after we're done with this web page, okay, that took about 17 seconds. So we now have the equivalent of an on-premises Team Foundation server at our disposal to use. So it's that easy to get started in the cloud, and I hope you'll sign up and do that afterwards. We start off with this getting started page. It's important to kind of collect the information here and take this in. So spend a couple minutes looking at it. The first thing on here is the URL for our account that we just created. You'll notice it is exactly what I specified in that UI. You don't want to lose this because it's not easy to get it back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and this is my URL for hosted for TFS preview. Okay. So I've got it. If I need it, I'll forget it later on the demo. I can come back to this here. But it's really important that you keep that. The second thing, and something we'll come back to in a second, is creating a team project. How many of you guys use TFS today? So you know what a team project is. You really can't do much in TFS without a team project, so this is why this is the second thing that you'd probably want to do in evaluating TFS. But before we do that, I want to show you guys a couple other things. There's a link here to download software. And if you follow that link, it's going to take you to a blog post that Martin Woodward posted this morning, which walks you through your options for accessing the Team Foundation service. So the first option is to use Visual Studio 2010, which actually requires you to have installed Service Pack 1 and a compatibility patch, which is linked to right here. So you want to download that and install that, and that'll enable your Visual Studio to talk to the hosted service. Same compatibility patch works for the other Visual Studio 2010 era clients like Microsoft Test Manager. And then there's a set of new clients which aren't live yet. So these are the Visual Studio 11 developer preview bits, and they're on MSDN today, so if you have an MSDN account, you can go and access those. They're going to be available for broad availability, I believe, on Friday of this week, so you'll be able to go and download that stuff at that point in time. We've got the Team Explorer Everywhere client available, so you can do the Eclipse and the Mac and the Linux stuff, as well as if you want to run Team Foundation Server on premises. That same Team Foundation Server on-premises install includes the build agent. So if you want to do automated builds either against an on-premises server or against the hosted service, you'll want to access that particular SKU, so you install that, and we'll take a look at what that looks like later on. And then obviously the Visual Studio 11 developer preview bits are in there. So that's a good blog post to know about, and it's nice to have this particular page available to you so you can go back to it. Another thing that we've done is Martin, again, has posted a bunch of tutorial videos. So that's linked into that page here. And there's a bunch of great information here on how to get started with the service and how to add users to the service and how to use a lot of the new capabilities of the next version of Team Foundation Server. A lot of that information applies both on-premises and in the cloud. But those tutorials are worth spending a little bit of time with, and you'll see that these link out to videos that are on Channel 9. So you can watch the videos. You don't want to have to read stuff. You can just watch videos. So let me close that stuff out. Over here on the right, we've got a link to make a suggestion. We're using user voice a lot for feedback on Visual Studio these days, and this is a link to our user voice site. If you haven't seen it already, it's a great place to go and tell us about what you'd like to see improved in Visual Studio or Team Foundation Server or any of the products. And so we're asking you, as you identify things that you'd like improved in the product and whatnot, this is an option for coming sharing that information with us. You can view online help. This is going to take you to the MSDN library. And then the last thing on here is this invite others link. So everybody who has an account has the ability to invite 5 other people to create their own accounts. And it's important to understand what you're inviting them to do is to create it's not an invitation for them to participate in your account. You can invite as many people as you want to participate in your account. We'll show you how to add people to the account in a little bit. This is if you've got friends or other people who would like to have their own account, or if you have one that you'd like to use personally, but you'd also like to use it for work, and you'd like to have that isolated in its own account, you can go and do that. So all I have to do here is click this Invite Others link. It's going to generate me a code. This GUID I would then go out and share with other people, and I could tweet it, I could do whatever, and it's going to be good for 5 people. So if you're really quickly scratching this one down, I'm not ever going to use it, and you can share that with 5 of your friends before somebody else does. So that's that. We're going to go ahead and create a team project here. Team project creation in the hosted service happens through a browser, whereas on premises it happens through Visual Studio. I'm going to create a project which I'll call Tailspin Toys 2.0. And I can, again, pick a process template just like I can with the on-premises product. The hosted service, the preview, does not allow us to go and add additional process templates yet. It also does not allow us to go and customize the process templates that are already in there yet. Those things will come with time. We're just working on some improved infrastructure for upgrading those things as we push new things out. A lot of people have complained in the past about the trouble of upgrading their in-flight team projects when we introduce new features which require new process elements to light up. And we're working on some infrastructure to make that a much easier process. So anyways, I'll specify that information, say create project. And it's going to go off and create this for me again. And again, this takes a little bit longer than creating an account does, but generally it happens in about a minute or so. And with a team project, you get it's effectively your workspace for team collaboration. So it's going to give you a source control space. It's going to give you a set of work items, bugs, and tasks, and user stories, whatever it is that's defined in that process template so that you can collaborate with people and go through all that stuff. So I'll have to give it a second to do its little spinning stuff here. This happens as a background job which gets queued in the service, and we're just polling job status. And we've only got so much infrastructure to run so many jobs at one time, so we have to wait for other people who are using the service and creating new accounts or creating team projects or things like that before it gets started. Looks like it's gotten started now, so it takes about a minute generally to get going. So you'll notice as we're waiting for this to complete that we've got a brand new experience around using TFS through a web browser. If you've used the Team System Web Access or Team Web Access that's in the previous versions of TFS, we've completely rewritten it from the ground up. It's a much more Metro-style application than what it's been in the past. It's very Ajax-y. We've focused significantly on the performance of the application, so that it should be a very pleasant user experience for you as you are digging in on it. We're in the process of doing some substantial enhancements to it as well, and we'll be rolling those enhancements out over the course of the fall. So if you want to see what's happening in the Team Foundation Server product before we actually put out a beta release at some point in the future, you can sort of keep tabs on what's happening with the hosted service because it'll get updated slightly more frequently. So here we are. We've got our team project created, and I'm going to go ahead and just navigate to my team homepage. So here I am in the homepage for my team project, Tailspin Toys 2.0. Again, this is that new experience here. You can see across the top, I'm currently looking at Tailspin Toys 2.0 here. And you can see the context here is because it's bold. That's the context of what we've got here. We've got a new concept called Teams. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But then across the top here, another link to the user voice site. We really want you to go in and give us that feedback. There's the support stuff. If you are having questions or having trouble with the service, We do have Microsoft support personnel who are providing support for the preview service. All that happens through an MSDN forum. This link will take you to that forum where hopefully you'll find that we're very responsive to all of your questions, and you guys are helping us to identify issues that we need to fix in the product before it's no longer a preview. We've got this administration mode here that allows me to go in and customize the settings for my project. That's how I get to that. But over here you can see my identity, and you'll notice that I logged in with my live ID, and that is the identity that it is showing me as here, which my live ID is somewhat readable, but a lot of people don't have very readable ones, and it's not really great to collaborate with your friends and coworkers on that. So I can come in here and change. One of the first things I might want to do is change the display name that's associated with that. So I can come in here and set it to what I want it to be. And then there's this nice picture here. The rumor is that this is a picture, a silhouette of Bill Gates' mugshot. If you've ever seen Bill Gates' mugshot, shows up in other Microsoft products. But if I come in here and click the change picture, I can upload a photo that I would want to use throughout the app. It just gives me a little bit more identity within the application here. So there it is. And so I've gone in, I've changed my display name, I've given myself a picture. It's a little bit more Doug now. So coming back over here to the left-hand side, we've got these things we call hubs. And these hubs are really all about just navigating through the various pieces of TFS. So the Home Hub has some things, easy access to common tasks that I might want to go through. If I click on the Work Items Hub, this is the new experience around work item tracking in Team Foundation Server. This is the same experience in the on-premises product as the hosted product, but you'll see it looks a lot different than what used to be there in the past. I can go in and I can create new work items just like I am used to doing in the Rich client. This is my infamous bug title I always use. On the left-hand side here, as this saves, I've got a set of, can't really see it until this will save. Okay, I've got a set of my queries that are stored over here. I can go through all that. And I can also create new queries, which offers me a query builder experience that looks a whole lot like what I'm used to with the on-premises product today and the web product as well today. If I go over to the Source tab, I've got a pretty rich source control experience in the web. So the first thing you'll notice, it gives a view that's really tailored towards understanding what's really happened recently. So I can query for all the recent check-ins or anything that I've done. This is a brand new team project, so all the check-ins that are in here happened as part of creating the team project. As when we have to create the folder for the team project and we upload some template files for the build process and whatnot. If I go ahead and click on one of these particular change sets, I can get a lot of information about the change sets, including if there were any work items associated, those. And then I can actually see the files that are in that change set right here. Clicking on the files gives me the ability to actually go in and look at the files, which is a nice convenient thing here. I can't edit the files in the browser, but I also have a diff view, which is great. Now this check-in added this file. That's why there's a plus sign next to it over on the left-hand side. So there's really nothing to diff with. I've got the same version 4 on both sides here. But you can imagine that as you're working with Source and you are evolving things much more frequently, it's nice frequently to have access to source history and whatnot without having to have the client tools installed on your machine. The other thing that's over in here is I can actually do a full browse of the source repository over here. So as I go in and expand these particular things, and you can see the process template folder and what's in there, and I can go through the same stuff that I just had on that other tab. So the last thing in here is the build stuff. We've got a rich view of builds. We don't have any builds yet. If we have time at the end, we can come back and take a look at what those look like. Now, one of the first things you're going to want to do, probably after you've kind of poked around a little bit, is you're going to want to invite a friend to come and use hosted TFS with you. So that's really pretty easy. The way you add people to on-premises Team Foundation Server is the same thing you do with hosted Team Foundation Server. And that just means all you have to do is grant them some sort of permission, either by explicitly granting them a permission or adding them to a group which is already granted permission, and then they're known to the system. So what I'm going to do here is I've switched into the administration mode, and you know that because it says exit administration now. and because there's sort of a gray background here. If I take a look at the project groups, then I can come in here and see the standard groups which are defined, and I can add members to the contributor group right here. So hosted TFS users are live ID users, so you just need to specify what their live ID is and add them to the system. So I'm going to add Bill Gates to our thing, and we'll add Steve Ballmer. We've been working on some code together. The live ID, the email address associated with their live ID is all that's required here. Click Save Changes, and they now have access. Now, they don't know they have access, though. The system does not alert them automatically. You need to let them know. You probably needed to have collected their live ID from them in the first place, but then you need to say, OK, here's the URL to connect to. And as soon as they connect, they'll get prompted for their live ID authentication. Once they provide that, then we will recognize that the live ID coming in is the same live ID that was granted access, and we'll marry all that up, and that user will become part of the contributor group in this particular case. So there's other kinds of groups on here as well, and if I click on Show Teams, it'll filter these out. We've got a new concept in the next version of Team Foundation Server called Teams. A team is really just a group that has some special attributes on it. So the idea is that you would want to model your organizational structure with these teams, and then every team gets, I'll exit administration and show you, every team, if I go to my team, every team gets a couple more hubs here. So specifically the backlog hub that you guys have probably seen, and it was shown in the keynote this morning, where I can go in and I can add, as a user, I would like to have a new bike. How about that? I'm making stuff up here. But you can go in and add those things, and you can allocate those to sprints as you want, and do your backlog management and whatnot through the web. And then the task board stuff here as well is a great way if you are executing on the sprint for you to go in and kind of get a visualization of those things. We use this to conduct our daily stand-ups, so that people come in and they talk about what's on their plate, and we move the tasks around right there in front of the stand-up. So if you guys are doing agile development, doing Scrum and those kinds of things, we've got some great tools in both the on-premises product and the hosted product for that. And if you want to understand this a lot better, there's another session tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit at the end, where they're going to go into the agile tools overall, and they're going to show you more in-depth how you would leverage these, and you get some great reporting that lights up. You can see this burn down in the upper right-hand corner there. It's a very generic looking burn down right now. It's actually not configured to give me the real burn down yet. So there's some more stuff to do that. So here we are now. We've used the service, and one of the next things that we'd want to do is let's go in and actually connect from Visual Studio. So here I am in the next version of Visual Studio, and I'm going to go ahead and get connected here. You'll notice that we've got a brand new experience around the Team Explorer in the next version of Visual Studio, and there's some other talks that are going to go into great depth on that. It's some really great stuff. But what I need to do is actually add my server. So all I have to do is type in that URL that was given earlier. So it's build818.tfspreview.com. And when I do this, I need to log in. So I will give them my same live ID, or I could give them Bill Gates' live ID. I think I may have fat-fingered my password. I do know my password. OK, so we'll go through, add that to the server. Here we can see, if you're familiar with the concept of a team project collection in Team Foundation Server, the hosted service gives you one team project collection today. That'll change eventually, but right now you get one. If you need more than one, you need to get another invite code and figure out how to create another one. So we'll go ahead and connect to that. And now we've got the same Team Foundation Server experience you'd expect with an on-premises server. What I want to get to, though, is I want to go ahead and actually show you guys how to set up build automation, because build automation is something that you run yourself when you're working with a hosted service. And so the first thing that we need to do for that is go ahead and actually put some source into source control. So in order to do this, I will bring up the Source Control Explorer. Generally, what you do is you'd open your solution and you just say add it to source control. I'm going to do it a little bit differently here. Just creating a workspace directly, mapping my entire team project to that workspace. And I'll get those few files on my disk. And then I have some code, which is hidden, that I can just drag and drop in here. And we'll let it add those files to source control, and then check them in. And I'm not going to provide a comment here. Okay, so I've got some stuff in source control, and you can see it's the exact same experience. It's also pretty snappy. So we've actually gotten a lot of feedback that using the hosted service feels, in many cases, better than using the on-premises service. We've focused a lot on the performance, and obviously scalability is critical when we're doing something like this. And we think that we've made a lot of improvements that hopefully you won't realize that it's actually across a WAN you're talking to. So we've done that. Now, if we go back over here to the home page, I said we want to set up a build server. So let's go in here, and we'll define a new build definition. And we get this error. Creating a build definition requires a build controller be defined for this team project. Do you guys know what a build controller is? It's a build server. I don't have a build server set up for my team project yet, but I do actually have. I've already installed the bits on this particular machine. So as I mentioned earlier, the way you get a build server is you actually install, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but it's the way it is right now. You install the on-premises Team Foundation server. That's going to lay down the build server as well as the on-premises server. But when you are done with that installation, all you do is you've got files on disk. You're going to go in and configure what you want to use. So if I actually wanted an on-premises server, I would go through one of these settings up here at the top, but I just want a build service. So I'll go in and start the wizard. Let this wizard go. And it's going to be, again, a very similar experience to if I were using an on-premises server. So fundamentally, the hosted service is the same product. It's just a different way of getting at it. This does start, I promise. Say that I've done it like 8 times today already, so it might fail on the 9th. In which case, it's not going to fail. Really, it's not. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go through here, and the experience is pretty close to next. I need to go ahead and tell it what team project collection I want to connect to. Again, we only get one team project collection with the hosted service. In order to see those collections, I have to authenticate with the service. And we'll go ahead and sign in. All right. So go through. There aren't any services configured yet. It's a brand new collection. And we'll go through and just accept the default settings here for the most part. I'm going to run my local service, the build service, as network service. And there's a note here about the build service is running as network service, but it's connecting to the hosted service with different credentials. We have a special account that was created when you created your account, and we use those credentials to access the server. And those are, again, the Azure Access Control Services mechanism that's at play there. You don't really have to understand the detail of that unless you want to go and customize the authentication and make sure your build service still has the ability to access the server. So come on, I click next. Not responding. You ever seen that before? I don't know why this one is so slow today. I promise it didn't do this earlier. You hear me whistle? No. Man, is the thing on? Yeah. Okay. So as this comes to in a second here, and it's potentially trying to go out and validate the credentials that we provided here. As this thing comes to, it's setting up the same build agent, build controller locally on one machine. So effectively, this is a single build server that's set up. You can, with TFS, you can have distributed builds. Does anyone do distributed builds with TFS? You have multiple agents on the back end, and you parallelize your build process, and it distributes, runs them in parallel. It's an extremely powerful mechanism once you get it configured. And you can do all that stuff with the hosted service as well. Now, it's going to actually, the builds are obviously running locally on your machine. So when it's done with those builds, it's going to drop those builds to a local file share. And OK, here we are. It's moving now. It's going to drop those builds to a local file share. So it's accessible on your local network. So if you are collaborating with people outside of your network, you might have to find some other solution for getting builds to them. Sometimes what people do is they actually set up multiple build machines and they run the same builds in different locations to drop to those different places. Another thing that you could do is some sort of file replication thing. But it's verifying the domain controller is accessible, which it's not accessible. So that might be our problem, is because for some reason it wants to access the domain, which it has not wanted to access up until now. Hey, what do you know? All right. This, Richard Hundhausen, you know this works, right? OK. So, yeah, OK. A previous update or installation requires a restart of the operating system. So I got these notifications earlier today that security updates had been installed. And I was like, I'm not rebooting this machine because I don't trust that it's going to come back up. And as such, we might have to do a reboot to get this demo to continue. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and abort what we're doing here. I'm going to go ahead and start my, my reboot. Rebooting this laptop can take a little while. But we'll do that. We'll go back to the slides, and we'll keep on talking. And then we'll come back and see if this thing, come on. If I just do a restart, it's not going to apply the updates, right? I have to just go ahead and do the shutdown and then turn it back on. Is it? Yeah, you guys saw that great feature in Windows 8 yesterday. This is an advertisement for that, where it tells you, hey, you're going to have to do a reboot. And anyways, that was not my intention. Let's go back to slides. Sorry about that, guys. OK. I have my clicker right here. So let's talk about what you get with the TFS preview. We've been talking about everything which is Team Foundation service up until now. The preview is your opportunity to use it before it is widely available for other people to use it. So this is the deal. So we're giving you the service because we want your feedback. And I've pointed out several places for you to give us that feedback as we've gone through this. But fundamentally, we are trying to learn and trying to get better at operating this service. We want to make sure that we're offering as great an SLA as you can expect from a great company like Microsoft. Make sure that we're reacting to feedback and we're improving it and making it work better for you. So that's really why we do this, and we ask that your part of this is that you give us that feedback. You are allowed to go live, and that means you can use for production this service in conjunction with Visual Studio 2010 clients. Again, those need SP1 installed, and they also need the compatibility patch installed. You can also use the service with the Visual Studio 11 developer preview bits, which are announced today and available for broad consumption at the end of this week. But those bits themselves are not go live. And what that means is that if you're using them and then you find out that there's a bug and you contact Microsoft support, unfortunately, we don't have any way to give you fixes for those. They're not serviceable. So we tell you that you can use those to give us feedback. And the truth is, as long as you don't need us to update them or anything, you can probably use those for some real-world stuff. Now, when we release new versions of Visual Studio, they're not necessarily going to be compatible with the solutions that you created with the previous and all those kinds of things. So it's not a good idea to go and make big bets on that. But effectively, the 2010 clients, everything that you can do today, you can go ahead and do those things. The support comes via the MSDN forums, as I mentioned earlier. We do have Microsoft support personnel working those forums, so you should be able to get world-class support through the forums. And we want to hear about the issues you're encountering so that we can fix them. So we encourage you to actually take advantage of that and give us that feedback through the forums. Tell us about bugs you're encountering. Tell us about places where you're confused and you need help to actually get to the next step. We're going to upgrade your data from release to release. We put this in production in April. We've upgraded, I think, 6 times in that period. And we're moving to a more aggressive upgrade pace as well. For the most part, those are transparent to you. We have the ability to upgrade the service without any downtime, and we strive to do that as much as possible. We will let people know when upgrades are happening. We've got a blog that's linked to the bottom of the web experience, and you can go to that blog and sign up for RSS feed and get notifications of upgrade maintenance windows and whatnot, and we'll explain to you whether or not there's going to be any particular impact. But your data is going to carry forward, and we're going to keep carrying it forward all the way to when the service is generally available. So you can continue using, you can make bets on this service today, and those will carry forward for you indefinitely. We're going to maximize uptime, but we're learning. So in the past 5 months, I think we've been operating the service. We've had about 99.95% availability on average. So it's pretty good. It's above what we claim is the standard for what we hope to offer in the production service. That said, the usage is about to increase by an order of magnitude, and we might find that the service needs to evolve a little bit and mature. So I apologize in advance for any unplanned downtime which we might suffer, but we're going to do our best to make sure that happens. And then sometime far in the future, we may start charging for the service, and I really can't tell you anything about what that would look like or anything. I'm sure that people want to understand that we haven't figured it out yet, and everything's evolving rapidly in the market and whatnot. We're gonna make sure that we're relevant, so we'll know more in the future on that stuff. So your call to action from this today, first go and sign up for your account, because we want you to use it, we want your feedback. And so what you should do coming out of this session is go get that card, sign up for the account. Download the Visual Studio 11 Developer Preview bits and use this service as a great way to experience that. There's a bunch of great new features in that are related to ALM and related to TFS, and those features work with the hosted service. So you can evaluate those features without having to install your own Team Foundation server if you're using the service. And then go get that friend code, good for 5 people, and share it with people somehow. So you can tweet it, you can blog it, you can just call people, call your mom. I'm sure she'd love to have her own Team Foundation service account. And then ultimately send us feedback as you are experiencing it, as you've got it. So there's a couple other sessions coming up here. Tomorrow there's a session that's about Agile development. We've got some really cool stuff for Agile. You've seen the Agile project management stuff. They're going to go into more depth on that and also give you a broader picture of the improvements that we've made for Agile development. This is Aaron Bjork and Peter Provost. They're a great team to go listen to talk, so you don't want to miss that one. And then this slide guy is Jamie Cool. Jamie's one of my coworkers in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Jamie's team has done some incredible stuff on improving Team Foundation Server for software developers and really improving the experience overall if you are a coder and you use TFS. So there's some really cool stuff. You don't want to miss this session as well. And if you've got feedback, definitely on the talk. We want to hear about that. We're still installing our update here, unfortunately. So I'm trying to stall as much as I can. But anyways, go and fill this out and let us know what you think of the session. And with that, I think we can go ahead and take questions. And I hope you guys have a few minutes of questions because we're still installing updates. Yeah, question here. Yes, so the question is, can we access the service through APIs as we do the on-premises server? And yes, it's another Team Foundation server. It's just a different URL that you're connecting to. Question over here? My question is the migration story. The question is about the migration story. Okay, so with what we have with the preview, there isn't a great migration story. We are working to enable your ability to take your on-premises Team Foundation server project collections and bring those to the cloud so that we can take your data forward and do that with you. We also are working on the ability for you to take your data with the hosted Team Foundation service and bring those collections down to on-premises. So you could attach them to an on-premises Team Foundation server, or you could give them to one of our other hosting partners and have them host your stuff for you. And so those things will happen. Those are very, very hard problems for us to solve. So they're not ready imminently. But we are going to make those scenarios possible for you. We also have the Team Foundation Server integration tools, they include solutions for synchronizing between Team Foundation servers. And those aren't yet ready for you to use with a Visual Studio 11 or Team Foundation Server 11 developer preview or any of the next versions of Team Foundation Server, including this one, but they will be. And so look for that in the not too distant future for your ability to then say, okay, I want to copy my data up to the cloud, or I want to work in the cloud, but I want to keep a copy of it locally, and I therefore want to use this synchronization tool to move the data back and forth. Does that answer the question? Okay. Oh, gosh, I love you. Yeah, bring that up here. Okay, there's another question over here. Is there a developer preview of the on-premises Team Foundation Server software? Yes, there is. Yes. And it'll be available with the other stuff. It's the same installation that you'll install to get the build server.
It's on MSDN subscribers today.
Yeah, it's on MSDN subscribers today. Back over there. Do we see Codeplex moving to the service? Really too early to say. We've had conversations with them about it. They actually have their own Team Foundation server running in Azure, so they can poke around and see what that's like. But it's certainly something that we've talked about, but we don't really know what the answer is there. Okay. So, gosh, it's the second time I've gotten the question today about how would we compare ourselves to GitHub. So obviously, we are both offering some ALM services hosted in the cloud. I think our approach to offering it is very different. They offer a very different source control experience than we do. They offer a different set of ALM services than we do. I am not an expert on GitHub, so I'm probably not the best person to answer this particular question. But in general, I think if you're comfortable and familiar with Team Foundation Server, then the Team Foundation service is probably going to be very comfortable and familiar with you as well. If you've got the breadth of ALM needs that TFS covers, then this is probably a great way to go and get that stuff. Okay? Question right here. I'm sorry, I'm doing these out of order, perhaps.
I'm Chris Lowndes from Avanade. I've been part of the early adopter program, and I've got a couple of tips for people.
Okay.
If they're actually going to use this for real projects.
Great. All right.
One is there is a session, I believe, behind the scenes for your Live ID usage of the service. And if you're sitting there writing code and you then find you're getting connectivity problems, it's because you probably haven't checked that box that says keep me signed in.
That's right.
So it's a very good idea if you're actually writing code with the connection to TFS open, tick that box.
Yeah, so effectively, when you authenticate with Live ID, we have a 24-hour credential. After 24 hours, you'll have to authenticate again. If you choose that, where the dialog where I clicked Windows Live ID, there's a checkbox beneath it. If you click that, then that happens automatically for you, and you don't have to actually go in.
And the other thing is we've managed to succeed in getting the TFS migration wizard that's available on Codeplex to actually bring the data down from the service onto an on-premise version. So it is possible. There was a couple of hacks in there to do it, and one of our team has posted those hacks up on Connect. So if you go on the Connect site, you can see the hacks.
All right, so completely unsupported there, guys. And I'll admit, we do this as well. Yeah. So, because we dog food the service, and we also want to have our data in the same Team Foundation server that we run on premises. So we have the synchronization tool working. And there's some hacks around how authentication works to make that happen. And apparently those hacks have gotten out. Don't call me when they don't work for you. But anyways, and I actually misspoke on the authentication one. You still get prompted every 24 hours if you check that checkbox. But when you leave Visual Studio and then you come back in, you won't get prompted again within that 24-hour period. So that's what that checkbox is really about. And it also has some capability to, as you move between rich clients, especially if you're using the command line, you do not want to have to be prompted for credentials every time you run a command line command. You got to click that checkbox so that it won't prompt you again for 24 hours. Question in the far back over there. Yeah, so the question is about using these broader identity types with an on-premises Team Foundation server. And all I'll say is we've talked about it. We know people would like us to do that. It's not anything we're actively pursuing at this point in time. Question over there? So I think I think your question is, can I access my database so that I can report against that database? Right. Right. So the answer is no, you have no access to your database. In fact, I don't have access to your database. We have only a few people who have credentials that can get them the credentials that could get them access to your database. And we do that, we discourage people from connecting directly to their TFS operational stores anyways because we don't want you to corrupt them somehow. Read-only access generally won't do that. But anyways, it's all, we handle the credentials there, and they're all super secret. And so unfortunately, no, you don't have access. Really, the reporting story that you have with the service today is to use our Excel integration, connect up to your work items, query those, and then use Excel's reporting, pivot tables, pivot charts, those kinds of things to report about work items. Okay, other questions? Do you guys want to see this video since it is still installing updates? So this is a video, I showed you guys that list of tutorials, and this is one of the videos that's on there that shows you how to create the build server, and you'll see Richard Hundhausen created this video for us. Thank you. Mr. Richard Hundhausen, everybody. Yes, okay. Anyways, so you'll see this is the stuff we went through, just a few less spinnies. And so Richard's specifying the credentials to run locally. On mine, I use network service. That's not available to him here because he's not on a domain-connected machine, so he has to provide a username and password that's defined locally. Network service doesn't exist on a non-domain machine.
But mine works.
But his does work. Thank you. Okay. And we'll go through and let him, his system verification passed. And we'll configure the stuff. And this is the same experience as installing like TFS itself. The TFS install is pretty easy these days, and we've even made it better in the next version. So if you if you want to run TFS on premises, just take a look at that. So after he's exited that, this is the TFS administration console, and this is where you can go in and actually look at the details of your build server setup, and you can see his controller and agent are both ready. These events, 1 warning, 2 informational, that's just, it's querying the event log for events that were raised by the build server and giving you easy access to those there. I don't know what was wrong with your machine, Richard. But so we go back over into Visual Studio, and he's in Visual Studio 2010 here. And he's going to go ahead and create a new build definition, I believe. Oh, manage build controllers. So you can see these are the build controllers he just created. And you can go, and you can, when you're managing build controllers, you can provide tags for your build controllers, which are sort of attributes of those. So if you have a farm of build machines, then you can tag your builds as saying that it requires this .NET Framework version or these tools to be installed on the build server. And as long as you've tagged those build servers, we'll marry them up appropriately for you. Here he is creating his Twitter control build definition in the Visual Studio 2010 experience. So you can define builds in Visual Studio 2010 when you have that compatibility patch, and it'll work against the hosted service here. And he's going to specify the workspace. I don't know what that was. Oh, that's them telling me I'm almost out of time, I think. Yeah, I hear you. So thank you, Brian. Okay, so he specifies the solution file, and anyways, this is all the same as the on-premises stuff here. So the really important thing is to understand that you need to set up your own build server against the hosted service. It understands that you're connecting it to the hosted service. It manages the credentials for talking to the hosted service for you. You'll get that build server out of the TFS server install that comes with the developer preview bits. Okay? Any other questions? One more? Is the drop location local? Yes, the drop location is local. So if you are, it has to be accessible by your build machine. Your build machine is what's going to copy to that location. Over there.
What's the experience in using project in Excel? So is that enabled with the service?
Yeah, so the question is, can you use the Microsoft Project or Excel integration with a hosted service? Yes, you can. It's all the same web services are there, so it works just like it would with an on-premises. It's just going to prompt you for a live ID when you get into those tools and you need to connect out to the server. Yeah? Is there any plans around doing a build service so that, the idea being so that you don't have to run it on premises, it would run in the cloud for you? We've talked about it. So it's certainly on our backlog of things that we'd like to do someday, but it's not there. It's not there with the preview today. Yeah?
What's the mechanism for the cloud-based repository to kick off that local build? Or is it the other way around? Is it build server querying and see, do I need to run?
The question is about the protocol with which the build server understands that there's a new build to run. And we changed the protocol in this next release so the build server polls the Team Foundation server to see if there are any builds for it. And therefore, it's not a push mechanism where the server pushes to the build agent like it used to be. And we do a long poll. It actually happens really quickly. Generally, those builds start in a couple seconds after when you queue them.
Did you say that we can't change the work item template?
Yeah, so the question is about modifying work item templates. In the preview today, we have locked it down so that you cannot modify your work item types, and you cannot add different process templates. And this is all to make sure that we can carry you forward. We're working on some new capabilities which will let us unlock those things for you and still be able to do some automatic upgrade of your process templates as the server evolves over time. But that stuff's not ready yet, so we've just locked those things down for now. The goal is definitely to allow them, yes. Okay, any other questions? One more over here. The question is, does it support the proxy server? Excellent question. It does not yet in the preview, but it certainly will. So the TFS proxy server is a way to cache your on-premises files, or cache your source control files on-premises so that you don't have to have everybody in your team suffering the high latency connection out to the service to get them. And right now, we have not done the work in the proxy server for it to be able to authenticate with the hosted service. But that is definitely on our backlog. It's a high priority for us to do that. Another thing that we've done in this release is we've actually changed the proxy server. It can actually cache more than just source files now. So any blob-type data that we store on the server for you can be cached in the proxy server. That includes attachments to work items, and it includes a lot of the test data, the test attachments that you might capture as you're running your tests, such as like IntelliTrace log files and things like that. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties here. It looks like it completed finally. So if you wanted to stick around for 15 minutes for me to boot my laptop, I could show it to you in person. But really, go check out those tutorials to learn more about it. And please do use the service. Use your code. Get a friend code. Tweet the friend code. And let's see if we can get a lot of people using the service. Thanks so much.